Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our session today on connected TV and OTT. My name is Max Jay. I'm VP of Ad Operations here for AUDIENCEX. And joining us today, we got Angela and Tyler from our team. Angela is our Director of Programmatic, and Tyler is our Media Strategy Manager. We have an absence here. Michelle on our strategy team is unable to join, so we're going to be filling in and talking a lot about the points that are covered in the deck, and happy to kind of field any kind of questions and questions and inquiries along the way. But just to get started, we're gonna start covering a couple of topics, and yeah, feel free to hand raise if there's anything that comes up in between the slides.
Oh, just to interject with a quick note, everyone who is registered for this will also be receiving a recording of this webinar by the end of the week.
Great. So kind of to kick things off, we wanted to kind of take a look at the 2021 review and reviewing the trends that we've seen. We previously this year we had another CTV OTT webinar, and love to kind of use this time to kind of follow up on the trends that we're seeing and how it's going to make any kind of changes as it relates to preparing for 2022 and landscape and expectations for the new year coming forward. Okay.
Perfect. So, hi everyone, I'm Angela. I'm going to kick this off, just kind of going through how programmatic TV has changed and what we're forecasting going forward. We're still seeing a significant amount of quick growth due to COVID behavior from 2020. And we're continuing to see CTV households grow, and that's going to continue through 2025. In general, people are cutting the cord and we're not really seeing them go back. So I think that's the main trend that we're seeing so far. Go to the next slide. So one interesting tidbit that we've kind of seen with CTV in connection to live sports are that a lot of people are continuing to cut the cord because of sports packages. In 2020, with the lack of live sports, 17% of recent cord cutters say that they'd likely subscribe to traditional pay TV when sports return, but 31% say that they are likely to stay subscribed to this new live streaming sports service. Basically, it's just been a really smooth transition, and customers aren't really noticing a difference between the pay TV and the subscription live service. You can go to the next slide. This is showing that it's what used to be live TV is really catching up to the streaming service. 42% are watching via streaming, whereas 62% are watching via traditional TV. So that number is just continuing to increase. And I think it was Roku who stated that the average savings per month is about $70. So with that $70 cost saving and the smooth transition between live sports streaming and traditional TV, that's where we're seeing this number continuing to increase. Okay. So retail media and shoppable ads. So traditional retailers are investing in proprietary media to capitalize on the growth of their e-commerce advertising. We're not sure of the exact launch date, but we're expecting to see Roku launch an app before or just around the holidays that allows Shopify sellers to develop and buy TV ad campaigns. This is really cool and innovative because it's going to allow the user to shop through the ad themselves, kind of what the ads are evolving to. You're not going to have to pause. It's a seamless transaction. We're really moving the channel down the funnel, as it's typically an awareness move. It's now going to be moving to like a multi-screen lower funnel opportunity. So it's going to really open up a lot of opportunities for
For attribution and tracking, absolutely. So
Yep,
one of the things
exactly.
one of the things we'll cover in the future later slides too is about measurement, and with the cross-channel attribution that we're able to tap into as it relates to CTV, OTT, and other media channels. It's going to make funneling everything into this unified customer journey a lot easier. And so you see that kind of reflected right now in terms of how people are baking their CTV into a full funnel strategy, especially in preparations for the holiday season.
Definitely. And I think another important note is that um, when we were pulling these stats, we saw that 50% of all shoppers reported to have seen an ad while streaming that actually sparked their interest. 71% of all millennials actually paused to shop, which is a very high number. And then 43% of all shoppers and more than half of millennials reported discovering a new direct-to-consumer service that they're interested in. So really shows strength in reaching our audience.
Fantastic, thank you.
I think Tyler, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. This is Tyler, the digital strategy manager over here. I'm going to kind of speak to a little bit of the environment and some of the shifts that we've seen in recent years, just so that can kind of help inform and contextualize exactly where users are going whenever they are streaming or consuming any connected TV content. So one of these elements that have happened is the streaming war continues between all these different subscriptions that we have. And a lot of consumers, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, were complaining about their bills being a little bit too high. A lot of these companies are starting to merge and consolidate just so that way the footprint within each network or station is going to be a little bit more of a streamlined approach. A few of these examples that we have would be HBO Max, which has expanded quite a lot of their streaming offering just within this past year, even with some of these direct-to-release movies coming to HBO Max. But outside of that, it even includes programming capabilities, even with the TNT, TBS, and True TV buckets, which have historically been under Turner Broadcasting. AT&T and Discovery, they had also combined their media assets. This even stems from a few years ago when Discovery and Scripps had consolidated too. So it's even more whittled down just to each publisher level. And the Viacom CBS merger, which saw Pluto TV joining forces with CBS and CBS All Access. This had even produced a new product with Paramount Plus that boasts a lot of the premium content within the MTV Viacom property streaming services. So what we can take away here is that there is an appetite for users to consolidate some of their streaming bills, but also on the publisher side too, to follow suit and follow with those consumer demands. In terms of the CTV hardware itself too, there's been a little bit of a change in recent years. The CTV hardware is increasing its capabilities and offering. Previously, there was a lot of Fire Stick, but now it's there's TV tech. There's tech that's baked into each TV, as we've seen with some of the TCL, Sony, and Roku partnerships. But ultimately, we do anticipate that it is going to be consistent throughout the years in terms of CTV hardware with maybe a few other players, but really it's going to be the current technology looking to expand their footprint. And in terms of the devices where users stream this content, it really varies between both the streaming stick and these box tops, as well as the gaming consoles within the PlayStation, Xbox, some Nintendo Switch. But we're at a very unique point where the cost of the TV itself is not necessarily as prevalent in the user decision making. Gone are the days where users are spending thousands of dollars on TV. We've actually seen the cost of TV prices decline because the technology that's baked into the TV, a lot of these publishers are incentivized to distribute that at a mass scale. So, instead of making money on the hardware themselves, it's more so that they make, these companies like Roku are making more money off of their outreach and how many TVs they have in market with their technology baked in. So all of this is kind of a long-winded way of saying that advertisers are increasing their reach, increasing their footprint. So that way for anybody who's buying this sort of ad space, they can deliver upon that inventory with pretty impressive and robust numbers, as Angela had kind of reviewed before. We are seeing that a lot of these CTV devices are going up and increasing, and a lot of that has to do with these publishers pushing this technology out, at an affordable and easily accessible way for consumers. So in terms of who is the streaming audience, we had kind of alluded to some of this before, but I think in a lot of the sort of webinars that you're going to come across, almost all of the times there's going to be the cord cutters, these analysis of how many people have had TV subscriptions versus haven't, to the point where we've actually even added new terminology like cord shavers, which we'll talk about a little bit in the future. But ultimately, just within the US cord cutter population, we are seeing this one increase. It's not as aggressive as it was maybe about 5-6 years ago, and even earlier, with the emergence of some of the Netflix and larger streaming services. It has tampered down a little bit, but we are seeing that more people are transitioning to that cord cutter mentality, in which the total market share of US households, nearly 57%, have either shaved, cut, or never paid for traditional TV. So we're now looking at figures where over half of the audience has actually never even touched that linear feed or any sort of linear broadcast feed. It's not necessarily a deterrent to stay away from any sort of big screen devices, but now finding the users in different ways through those connected TV means. And in terms of the video on demand graphics, 32% of US households don't pay these traditional TV subscriptions, but about 1/4 identify as the cord shavers. Now, these cord shavers are a little bit more of the unique audience. Again, I had mentioned before that some of the cord cutters are a little bit more prominent and spoken about more aggressively. But these cord shavers are a little bit different in a sense that they're looking to whittle down their subscription-based model. You could think of some of these users as maybe having a cable TV subscription, but not paying for necessarily some of those premium channels or content. So that way they can kind of streamline and control their own cost and experience when they are streaming any sort of TV. But when we do look across these graphics, it is very consistent with what we had brought up before across a lot of these younger audiences, in which they are a lot more acclimated within this either cord never or cord cutter environment. Even within this circumstance, 39% of millennials are actually a cord never, comparative to the baby boomers, which only 12.5% have never actually had a TV subscription. So when we do take a look at this, we do understand and acknowledge that a lot of these younger audiences are less likely to be found on a linear feed, but definitely worth exploring in the video on demand space. And so for the connected TV households, again, I think from what we had mentioned before is just that even within the immediate, we are seeing that 82.4% of the US population owns a connected TV device. But even within 2025, we are expecting about a 3% increase. Now, I know that 3% can be, reviewed or regarded as, sort of a marginal or moderate increase. But when we are looking at the US population, 3% of that population is a pretty prominent number. So even beyond 2025, this is probably likely going to be increasing, but the general rule of thumb that we use across internet users is that 90% of the US population will have access to the internet. So we kind of expect this to sort of close the gap and really mirror that sort of internet audience alongside this connected TV household. It makes for a really great story for that full funnel approach when you are engaging audiences in that digital ecosystem.
Okay, I can jump in here, talking about the share of video streaming viewers, just to go through this really quick so that you're aware of what all these stand for. An MVPD is a service that distributes or provides multiple television channels. So you're gonna think of this as your typical TV service, your AT&T, Comcast, Dish, etc. AVOD is advertising-based video on demand. So this is a business that makes money by selling ads on their videos. You'll see this with pre-roll commercials, display banners. I think YouTube's the most popular AVOD. SVOD is a subscription video on demand, and this is what allows consumers access to an entire catalog of content at a flat rate, usually monthly. So this is your Hulu, your YouTube. So that's kind of a breakdown of people in the US in regards to platforms. And then this is showing that 127 plus million US residents use these AVOD platforms. So you can see the increase, like Tyler was speaking to earlier, really big jump a couple years ago, and it's continuing to rise. So we're definitely seeing that percentage continuing to creep up, not as much as 4 or 5 years ago, but it is continually increasing. And then here are the services by hours spent watching them. Netflix is at the top. It's pretty clear to see the top 3 leaders: Netflix, YouTube, and Hulu. And then important to note too that people aren't just subscribing to one service. More than half of homes in the US actually are subscribing to at least 3 SVOD services. So that's important to note, that viewers aren't only on Netflix or Hulu. Some of these users are available across all these other platforms. So when you're coming up with your plan, it's just important to know that you can target an individual other than just targeting one PMP or one platform. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on the most premium content. If they're subscribing to at least 3 services, you're going to be able to to find that user across a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and thanks, Angela. I can jump back in here too.
Cool.
And just a quick note too, thanks for defining some of those acronyms. I think within our industry, there's definitely no shortage of shortened words and acronyms between AVOD, SVOD, TVOD. So always useful to have those defined. What we also take a look at within a CTV environment is also the second screen usage. The numbers that you're seeing on this screen were pulled from Global Web Index, which is a survey-based company that wants to understand how many users are actually using a second screen while they are targeting any sort of or while they are consuming any connected TV device. So a lot of the times we are seeing that 38% of users are going to be using their smartphone while they are streaming content on either linear TV or connected TV. 18% using their laptop. The figures, the figures that we have here are pretty prominent just because there are different ways to access and target your user, even when they are consuming any sort of connected TV devices or when they're consuming any sort of connected TV content. So, a lot of the times, we do think about those full funnel approaches and those 360 holistic campaigns. Well, if somebody's watching The Masked Singer, on their connected TV device, you can actually, use any sort of social listening like an Alfonso or previously Tremor to, further target that user while they are consuming that content in real time. So, when you think about that user experience, it really is sort of getting the big screen TV device and the smaller one that's in their hand. And it adds a little bit of value, especially as that sort of, as you are looking to build frequency across your audience. When a user can notice 2 very prominent targeting environments for a specific ad, it really resonates with the user, and we typically will see higher engagement when a user is coupling that frequency across multiple devices. And when we look at CTV as an equalizer, I kind of like that. And it's funny too, using the equalizer term, across CTV and linear TV. I think previously, over the past 20 years, linear TV has always been, deemed as that sort of king advertiser. With their higher out-of-pocket costs, very complex trafficking schedules. Whereas CTV, there are advantages in the nimble nature that it has. Since it's not running on that linear feed, there's a lot more of that, one-to-one ad serving, a lot more opportunity for attribution. And it really has sort of equalized that market. Some of the pain points of a linear TV, like some of the, offline attribution, it's solved through a connected TV environment and that digital space. So within addressable TV, programmatic and connected TV, again, I had mentioned before that a lot of our, our industry does have a lot of acronyms. But really, this is kind of that big living room screen that users are attracted to. So within this environment, we do kind of understand there is some measurement and attribution that isn't necessarily found within that offline TV and spot attribution measurement on a linear feed. So there are some items here like the unified IDs, open measurement for TV, and identity mapping to understand, who, of our audience, how much did we actually expose the connected TV ad, and of that audience, how many were driven to site after that. And we can kind of mix and match some of these tactics. I had mentioned the second screen devices before, but even through some of our identity mapping solutions, we can still understand whether a user did, see a connected TV spot, later on targeted by a display ad, and then they click through to the site. So again, this is kind of that holistic journey to really be able to laser focus on that user and build that full funnel approach, with CTV kind of being that upper funnel channel, and then using some other creative digital channels to push them along through the consideration and eventual conversion phase.
Yeah, if we're going to add in there, Tyler, I think that's tremendous. Equalizer in the sense that we're able to measure cross-screen, cross-device experiences and establishing that audience footprint. That's really the unifier there that makes that happen. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it really is. It really is awesome to see, some prominent investments, seeing a lot more of that direct attribution. But even when we take a look at the future too, earlier this year, we were lucky enough to have, some of those cookies, the cookie deprecation kind of a kicked can towards later on within the year. But even within the immediate 2021 timeframe, advertisers are looking to sort of diversify and prepare for that cookieless environment and cookieless future. So when we do look at this survey based on Innovid's findings, brands are planning on activating CTV with a lot more first-party data. So this is going to be through either, customer lists, CRM lists, or even purchase data lists. But ultimately, this is going to be, a little bit more of that one-to-one, first-party data activation, as third-party cookies will eventually be going away. Other things that would be like the cohort-based targeting, so segmenting different audience groups and aligning that with the brand profile, contextual targeting and publisher first-party data, and hashed email solutions. I think what we have here is just kind of this pivotal point as we are still understanding what that cookieless environment world looks like. Join any webinar and anyone's going to give you their initial thoughts as to where that's going to lay on the spectrum. But most brands, agencies, and advertisers are all in agreement that some of the first-party data that can be built now is going to be a lot more applicable in the future as those solutions go away. So, what we are seeing is that it's a pivotal time now to be collecting that sort of information so you can really deploy it at your discretion across very high value audiences and lookalike propensity models. So, of course, there's more to come within this cookieless environment. It's still going to be an ongoing and developing conversation in the future, but some of the work and targeting strategies could be implemented now, just so you're ready for that up and coming cookie deprecation period.
Absolutely. Yeah. The way that CTV OTT is framed, that infrastructure, that framework really sets it up for success. And that's what we've seen in the numbers quarter over quarter, in that it impacts forecasting as we just see media budgets increase over time, right? And then just having that baked into your overall customer journey, full funnel approach, we're definitely seeing CTV OTT future-proof in that sense. And then backed by identity solutions to help ID graph that particular user. And so it's not dependent upon a cookie. And so it's really the one media channel I think has at the forefront in terms of being prepared for a cookieless environment, a cookieless future. So definitely see more trends in terms of growth overall moving forward. Great. So on that note, I think that wraps up our webinar. We had a number of items that were covered. And in general, I think what we're seeing is that we're validating the trend that we saw earlier this year. And we're seeing continued growth with, again, framework and infrastructure as it relates to measurement and attribution in a cross-device environment, powering this kind of future, right? It's future-proof. And so definitely, it's a bright future for CTV OTT, and it's an imperative piece of the media plan strategy moving forward. So on that note, I think we have one question that kind of came through on the Q&A. This one, if we want to take a moment to add, if you guys, participants are going, feel free to pop in a couple more questions as we go, as we answer these live. So first question we have here, it speaks to targeting. So if a brand advertiser is targeting the same OTT but uses a different CTV device, does the ad reach the viewer no matter what, or does it only go through the CTV that is bought? For what I'm interpreting in terms of this question, it's about ad delivery for that end user. So as it relates to CTV OTT, if the CTV device is made in that target request or that ad request, then it will definitely be sent to that user on that device specifically. But again, with cross channel measurement and footprint, we're able to reach that user in a different device if necessary against that same OTT content. Angela, Tyler, do you guys want to chime in on that, or is there anything else you guys are seeing? No.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry, Max. I was muted for that back half, but yeah, no, you covered it.
great. Next question we have here, and I'll pose this to Tyler and Angela. Many brands do not have first-party data and don't want to use in DMP. What are their options? I think this is related to kind of establishing targetable audiences from a CTV standpoint. So first-party data don't have a DMP. What do? That's going to be a big component missing in terms of path forward. So if you're not collecting first-party data, there's still third-party data that you're able to tap into. And with the beauty of identity solutions that are being utilized right now in terms of protocol, there's a consensus and growing support to adopt identity solutions, whether it's through a ad tech stack like Trade Desk or through a publisher authenticated network. But the idea is that you're able to utilize a lot of that data, and it's funneling through the bid impression requests, so that you're able to kind of transact on third-party data what you're getting from other sources and not on your own. But I would highly, highly suggest that even if you don't have first-party data, to do something simple in terms of collecting email addresses, because you're able to utilize an onboarding method to map those users to those identity graphs, and it's anonymized, so in the set that you're able to continue to target them. So it's not cookie based. You're not connecting into kind of any kind of CRM, so to speak. But at the very basic level, be able to compile an email list or a contact list, and then you'll utilize that for uploads for matching purposes.
Yeah, and to add on to that, from Max, beyond just some of the first-party data collection, there's also just the within PMP publishers first-party data that can be readily used and accessed to. Ultimately, there's a few effective ways to using that without a DMP, but the collection and methodology is going to be kind of supplemental to any sort of PMP publisher first-party data that's readily available too.
Right. Next question, Tyler, I think could be directed to you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The question is, how important are traditional linear TV channels in addition to CTV to maximize reach?
Yeah, it's this is a great question, and I think if we're kind of handling it Socratically, within traditional linear TV channels, using CTV to maximize that reach, it really is kind of a question of your target audience too. So it's really just a critical point to understand where does your audience live. If you are, for example, an advertiser that advertises to a lot more of the younger demographics, linear TV is probably not going to be as important or prominent within your buy. But if you do have a little bit of an older audience, TV might be a little bit more worthwhile for that sort of mass reach and mass awareness. So I would say that it kind of comes down to the audience and how much of your audience lives within each environment. But in terms of if you are doing a sort of audience analysis and you do see that a good share of them is on traditional TV, a good share of them also has connected TV devices, There are different solutions like addressable TV that can run some sort of digital inserts within linear feeds. I would say that, if the importance is going to come down to the audience level and how you can effectively execute that. But it's always an open conversation. It's always worthwhile to just kind of always check in on that audience and make sure that, they live within the environment that you're playing into.
Absolutely. Yeah, as part of the ad ops team, one of the things that is not mentioned as much as maybe it should is we're actually able to partner with folks like Nielsen to help measure an incremental lift as it relates to any kind of media from a linear TV to CTV OTT perspective. So there's definitely tools and resources available that we can tap into to help kind of formulate or extract insights from that kind of cross media type of approach. Cool. Next question here, Tyler. Have we seen a CTV impact on the B2B segment? Any statistics or examples that we might be able to come up with?
So any statistics that I could think of, nothing off the top of my head, but I think just the way that we can kind of think about the B2B segment is that, there is no shortage of B2B audiences within the connected TV environments either. It does come down to a data conversation too, of using any sort of data-rich B2B partners. One of the ones that we at AUDIENCEX use, for example, is Bombora, in which those digital audiences are, available to target on connected TV devices as well. So I would say that, the takeaway from B2B segments within the CTV audience is that if we have the capabilities to reach them within the digital ecosystem, typically they're available within connected TV as well. But I'd say in terms of the notable trends, it's definitely not trending downward. It's definitely, trending up as more people and more share of households, bring that connected TV device into their home.
Right. Absolutely. And the last question to kind of round things off is about cohort-based targeting. We had mentioned that as one of the strategies in terms of targeting the audiences in a cookieless environment or cookieless future. So how does AX define cohort-based targeting? I can take that one. To kind of in the most basic terms, what we're seeing is cohort-based segmentation is really anonymized groups of people who share common interests, right, or some kind of online behavior. And so these cohorts are all, again, identified anonymously, and we're able to kind of target off of those quote unquote interest groups. So that's really at the end of the day what it is. It's aggregated, anonymized audience data. So that's what we're seeing, with Google having kind of, spearheaded that a little bit or started the conversation earlier this year about putting a lot of effort into cohorts. But you're also seeing this a lot on publishers as well, publisher networks where they're curating these, interest groups through their inventory that they have, and then making it available through a DSP or programmatically. So that's how we're seeing cohorts, and we've been testing a couple, and more and more as we start to see and lead into developments for 22 and 23, we're going to see a lot more emphasis placed on cohort-based aggregation, and so that'll be something that we'll be adding into possibly our media plan tactics moving forward. But definitely have been testing it out and being able to utilize identity solutions as a means to measure against performance. Fantastic. So I think that does it for us today. I don't see any other questions. If there's any additional inquiries and questions that surface, please you can reach us. We have our information here. Definitely drop a hello hello@audiencex.com, and Tyler and myself and Angela will be happy to be able to respond to any questions there. So again, thanks everyone for joining today. Again, we were so sorry that Michelle on our strategy team was unable to attend, but I'm really happy and appreciative of Tyler and Angela making the time to speak today. And we'll be again setting out a version of the presentation following this wrap up.
Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Thanks again, Tyler. Bye, Angela.
Sure thing.
Bye.